This series of records has been taken in 1960s and 70s, and as you can see, Ferrari was never actually an ordinary team. The last time when Ferrari won Le Mans before they left the sport completely was in 1965, and because Ferrari is Ferrari, they had their reasons. However, after more than 50 years of nothing, with all of the BOP rules in the world, and with all of the competitors from Toyota, Porsche, Cadillac, Peugeot, BMW or Lamborghini, Ferrari came back and took over the whole world of endurance racing. So my question is, if it's that easy to be this dominant on this kind of level in the top class in endurance racing, why didn't Ferrari come back sooner to the WEC? What stopped them for more than half a decade? The endurance world of 1960s was in many ways different, but mainly quite a bit more violent than today's one. Apart from the main challenge being to just stay alive, it was racing in its absolute purest form, without any budget caps or some sort of need of having 50 strategists. The most extreme races on Nürburgring or Le Mans had much more unpredictable progress, and with that being said, the biggest challenge was not to make the fastest pit stop in the right time on the right place, but to make the car able to cross the finish line. Reliability was a huge issue, and it undoubtedly still is. However, after 65 seasons, Ferrari has managed to set the bar higher than anyone else. With the unexpected arrival of Ford GT40 plus the rising cost of racing, the game has become quite a bit harder than before. Ford had a huge factory fundings plus the entire racing division against a couple of passionate mechanics from Maranello. However, even that wasn't the worst case scenario for Ferrari. The worst case scenario was Porsche. We will not talk about how the 917 almost bankrupted them. We're just gonna say that this move put a definitive gravestone to Ferrari's future. Now, this was a big shock for the sport, because Ferrari has defined the Le Mans. They claimed 9 wins overall, which was a day-to-day record, and people are wondering, when are they gonna show up again? Or is it gonna be a definitive end for Maranello? After this came only rumors about some possible comeback. It's true that Ferrari still developed engines for Lancia in Group C, but it was never an official Maranello project, and when it was, these ideas often ended right before a drawing board. However, after all this struggle and lost attention of tifosis, a little spark of hope has shown in the beginning of 1994. Private team of Scandia, Doran and Momo bring on the track completely new car, and it finally had a Ferrari logo on it. It was officially called the Ferrari 333 SP, but from the start it was car purely made to race under IMSA. And yes, it later attempted other racing series that were raced in Europe, and they even tried the Le Mans, but the car didn't qualify. In some ways, it's a bit unwanted middle child of Ferrari's history, but it still had their 4-liter V12, and you know what's coming. After this strange period, FIA decided to create an LMP1 category, which could have been a big turning point for Ferrari. Previous GT1 that we all remember for lovely cars from McLaren, Porsche, Toyota and others provided dream machines that we could have technically bought as customers on public roads. Okay, with the time, these machines didn't have anything in common with their road league version, and the development and pushing budgets to the limit created a class so expensive that it completely missed the point of the entire GT1. After this fiasco, FIA decided to make a class that would have been much more controllable and that would cancel the expensive but still very iconic making of cars on public roads. But to be honest, you only had to build one car, which is totally missing the point again. But there was another problem with LMP1 category, or a situation, as you wanna call it. It came right in the absolute peak performance of Ferrari in Formula 1. Michael Schumacher at the time was winning titles after titles, rewriting history books, filling stands with red color, you know the story. So, for Ferrari, it didn't have any real benefit to start a new extremely expensive project in WEC. However, after Michael Schumacher's era, the Mission Le Mans could have finally started, and it looked promising. We still had LMP1 rules, Ferrari sold more cars than ever, and they still had an overall strong lineup. But then, unfortunately, in 2008 came financial crisis. I think you start seeing a little complication which Ferrari had through all these years. Okay, in the mid-2010s, after financial crisis, after the conflict on Middle East, after the whole world decided to go upside down, Ferrari could finally try LMP1 properly. But now, these Le Mans prototypes did get almost as fast as Formula 1 cars, which meant even more expenses. Plus, they would have to fight against rivals from Toyotas, Audi, Porsches, blah 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 blah. Let me just get something straight. Ferrari is and always was extremely cautious about their image. They like to be winning titles, and that costs even more money than just picking a racing series and trying to race in it. If you want to attract a company like Ferrari to invest into a racing series, you need to fill a couple of basic ingredients. First, it has to be prestigious, so it attracts other major manufacturers. Second, they would have to struggle in Formula 1. And third, the financial situation of the road-going company should be at least decent. I know that I'm talking constantly about money, and it's hard to imagine how financially difficult it is to make a title-winning team. But from multiple sources, each LMP1 season could cost well over 100 millions of euros. In other words, it was time to bring a successor, and it was strictly built on three key goals. First, cut the cost significantly to attract more manufacturers. Second, allowing road-relevant technologies to return, because the original idea of hypercar was to be based on the actual road legal hypercar. And third, to make the roads a bit more loose, to bring new ideas, different concepts, different opportunities to entry. FIA also said that you could borrow an already built chassis by 4 chosen suppliers to start racing, which is cheaper and also faster to develop. So for someone like Ferrari, who didn't race in endurance racing for the last half a decade, this option could have been perfect. But then again, Ferrari is complicated, because Ferrari is Ferrari. They were always building their own cars, with their own chassis, with their own engine, with their own electronics. You can't just go to Ferrari and say, hey, you got some suppliers, maybe you could use them for entering the series. No, that's not how it's Ferrari like. So Ferrari had waited. In 2021, they announced that they are officially working on their new hypercar, but it wasn't clear when it's gonna hit the road, or if it's gonna be just another failed attempt like every single one before. But it turns out that their decision was genius. They took the early LMH period as an absolutely experimental phase, and FIA itself made some important decisions along the way. For example, the balance of performance system, or BOP if you prefer, was being fine-tuned in real time. By that waiting, Ferrari got to observe how the ACO and FIA handled BOP rules, and especially if the promised engineering freedom would be honored. Then it became clear that WEC was on stable trajectory with many committed companies, and the BOP rule system was showing signs of balance. And that was the key point. Ferrari doesn't enter racing categories unless it can control its engineering direction. The LMH regulations allow them to build everything entirely from scratch in-house. Not to even mention that building your own car from the ground up takes a lot of time, especially when you're entering a new era with unfamiliar technologies. Their debut race came in March 2023 at the 1000 miles of Sebring, and surprisingly, they overtook Toyotas in qualifying, and they weren't just up to speed, they were literally leading the field. But the first race revealed their first real challenge with tire management and minor reliability issues. While they started strong, Ferrari couldn't maintain the pace across the 1000-mile distance, plus Toyotas have defended brilliantly. They controlled 1-2 tempo across the whole race and took a victory. However, the 3rd and 7th place wasn't a failure by any means. Getting a podium finish in your first race is impressive, and it shows promising future. Plus, in the same time, there has been told some concerns about FIA giving a little BOP advantage to Toyotas. Spa-Francorchamps is often considered as a mini Le Mans due to its long straights, variable weather, high-speed corners, and just the history itself. Ferrari once again had strong qualifying pace, but the number 51 car has crashed, and the number number 50 had contact with traffic that damaged the splitter. Despite this, they were still in the fight, and this experience would prove important just a few weeks later. At the centenary 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2023, Ferrari showed up fully prepared. They executed perfect qualifying. However, the real triumph came during the race. The number 51 car, driven by Alessandro Pierguidi, James Calado and Antonio Giovinazzi, ran nearly a perfect 24-hour stint. They managed tire degradation better than ever, and with improved energy management and avoiding serious contact, the situation looked more than optimistic. Even with multiple safety cars, changing conditions and immense pressure from Toyota, the Ferrari withstood the pressure. And then, after 58 years, the first time since 1965, Ferrari crossed the finish line to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. They have beaten Toyota by just over 4 minutes, and the second car still finished on the impressive 5th place after dealing with technical issues. This race was one of the most dramatic and successful returns in modern motorsport history, and maybe even the best one. It's always about luck, at least partially, but Ferrari's pace was no coincidence. After Le Mans, the rest of the season continued with some up and downs moments. For example, at Monza, Ferrari hoped for a home win, but they were affected by a late race collision and some balance of performance adjustment that has slowed them down. Of course, the 491P has shown some weaknesses along the way, but it's safe to say that through 2024, this car has suffered just minor difficulties that were nothing in comparison to problems of their rivals. But we're in 2025. Ferrari has claimed the 3rd consecutive victory at Le Mans, and their pace, even over all of the BOP rules, is still superior. So, who or what can stop Ferrari? Can they sustain this level of performance in the long term? Well, the answer looks like yes. They've already confirmed a long-term commitment to Hypercar series. The 491P will always continue to evolve under Ferrari's own chassis rules, unlike LMDH rivals stuck with their given chassis. There are even rumors that Ferrari is already developing a next-gen LMH car for 2026 or 2027, featuring more integrated aero hybrid package and possibly lighter construction materials borrowed from their F1 division. No one has the momentum, prestige or engineering firepower as Ferrari does right now. That's because they achieved the most important aspect of endurance racing: consistency. So, yeah. Right now, there's no reason why Ferrari shouldn't be fast in the future. They will have a hard job assuming their disadvantage of BOP rules, but till this point, they have managed to overcome them just fine. I'm wondering, what do you think is gonna happen with Ferrari? Tell me in the comments, and I will see you soon. Bye.